Hello, I'm Mike Graham, president of Midwestern Securities and the host of Banking on Growth. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Today with us, we have our friend Scott Stevens. Scott is with Integrity Technology Solutions. And Scott, you are the Chief Information Security Officer.
Yes, I am.
Thank you for being with us today. It's a hot topic.
It is. Yes. Appreciate the opportunity, Mike.
We appreciate you. Will you take a few minutes and for our audience, introduce yourself, a little bit about your background and your company and their background as well?
Be happy to do that.
Thank you.
So personally, I've been in the IT industry for going on 40 years. I'm about a year away. So actually got to start using technology when IBM came out with this thing called the PC. I would happen to be on campus at the U of I. Started working with PCs. One thing led to another. I found myself in a career in IT. So I have spent 24 years with a large accounting firm. There, I did a lot of work with compliance, especially working with financial institutions. And then after some merger and acquisition activity, decided to seek a different opportunity, and I called Integrity. That was the only call that I made. So I've been with Integrity now for about 8.5 years. I was actually hired to start a security team. And 8.5 years ago, I was the only person on that team. And today we are a team of 10. So suffice to say, there has been significant growth. So Integrity does provide managed services. So a traditional managed service provider, but also very much focused on the regulated clients. We work with a large number of financial institutions, assisting them with audit prep, with remediation, and then also with the protective and detective controls to better secure their environments. So there's just a lot going on.
Interesting. Definitely. Yeah, you've seen a lot of change in the last 40 years.
Oh, it is. It really has. And the topic we're talking about today is actually one of the greatest changes I think I will see in my career.
Absolutely. So let's just jump right into that. Everybody's talking about AI, NVIDIA, chips, Elon Musk, Sam Altman, all of these very interesting things, cultural identity with AI, all of this stuff. But let's start with some basics for people like me that aren't that tech savvy. What is AI? What are we talking about?
Quite simply, AI stands for artificial intelligence. And it involves when a machine has the ability to make changes based on what the machine sees. It does not need human input. So AI and AI technologies have actually been with us for a long time, but it has to do with machine learning and then the ability for the machine to make a change, to make a suggestion, to prompt for an input based upon what it sees.
So everybody's, I'd say half of the room is afraid of AI and half is excited about AI. But I think all of the room recognizes it's here and it's something we have to navigate. Are financial institutions already using AI? And why do you think it's such a hot topic? And why is the audience so split on it?
To take those questions separately, first of all, AI technologies have been in use for a long time. People who use email spam filters, most email spam filters for perhaps the last 8 to 10 years have had the ability to learn based on what they're seeing in email traffic and then alter, adjust, and set up new rules to block spam. So that is technically an AI tool. You also have AI, any one of the financial institutions or any companies that are using next generation antivirus products. They're commonly referred to as EDR or endpoint detection and response. These products have AI built in. They are able to learn on the fly, see what's going on, make a determination whether something is suspicious, malicious, or legitimate. And that is actually an AI algorithm that is running tools like SentinelOne, Carbon Black, CrowdStrike. These are very common products that most most listening to us are hopefully using. So that's the AI is in place. It is being used. Now, within financial institutions, we are starting to see a desire to adopt AI. Now, to your point, it's very divided. Half the world thinks, oh my, this is the end of humankind, right out of Terminator, that's Skynet is here. On the other side, you've got people that are full speed ahead. Ultimately, AI is another tool. I am very involved at Illinois State University with their College of Cybersecurity and their IT or their computer science department. Many of the professors at ISU look at AI as just another tool. And I was in a meeting, one of the professors said, AI is going to be the death of humans, just like calculators is going to be the death of math. Well, that didn't happen. It's a tool, and we all use it. We've all got calculators on our phones. It is another tool, but we're going to have to figure out how to work with that tool and how to leverage that tool to best benefit what we do.
It's an interesting way to look at it like that, as just part of a learning evolution or a technological evolution and the next step in it. We were on vacation last week with our family, and we were talking about, I forget the topic exactly, but we looked it up on Wikipedia. And somebody said, well, what did you do before Wikipedia? Well, we had these things called dictionaries and encyclopedias. Right. So interesting way to look at how learning matches the generation and the time that we have, the time that we're living through right now. So you mentioned some ways that AI is being used kind of defensively, spam filters.
Very common, yes.
Are there ways that banks are leveraging AI offensively, responsibly?
We are starting to see the adoption of AI. And let's just talk about some of the benefits to AI. Some of the benefits include AI can do mundane menial tasks with high accuracy and very quickly. AI can also answer phones and provide customer service. How many people have called AT&T? And I know that is not the best AI, because when AT&T answers, hello, we've heard that. That's AI. It's listening to you and it's reacting based upon your inputs. I am aware there are some financial institutions that are considering leveraging some type of an AI auto attendant for customer service. So I know of a couple that are very close to implementing solutions like that. There are also AI solutions that are out there that are made by vendors that are going to help things such as vendor management programs. Also looking at loan origination and making determinations on loans, pulling information together quickly. But the AI on the back end is pulling that information together quickly. Now, we are also starting to see financial institutions using AI in the generative capability. It's terrific in the generative ability, but there are some tips and tricks to using that. So, and we can touch on those here in a little bit, but.
Yeah, interesting. There's got to be security concerns that every institution is weighing. What are some of those security concerns? Are they legitimate? Is it safe?
There are certainly security concerns, but I don't want to make them bigger than vendor management. Our financial institutions have vendor management programs. They consider vetting every application, every company that they are working with. It does change what you're looking for, but at the end of the day, it does come down to vendor management. So let's talk about some of the risks with AI. One of the risks, you don't want your information to become the answer to some other financial institution's question. We need to have assurance that there are boundaries around your data so that your data stays and remains your data. So that is one area of concern. A second area of concern, like I said before, AI can quickly find things. How many people have looked out on the network share drive and you see all those folders, and inside those folders are other folders and other folders and other folders, and information, frankly, can be hidden in plain sight. With AI, it's not hidden anymore. If I ask a question about how much does a person make, or you can ask questions based on the data that is there, it can rapidly find that. So no longer. So now we have to be concerned with, have we properly set up our security credentials? Does the human resources group are they the only group that's able to get access to human resources files? Is this team the only team that can get access to their files? In the past, things could be hidden in plain sight, but no more with AI. It will quickly find information if it's available to you. So other risks, you've got what we call hallucinations. AI makes things up. So you can ask AI to generate a document for you, and it will go through and it will generate the document. But if it doesn't know what to put in a certain section, it makes something up and it sounds really, really good. So there are some risks like that. Further, we are looking at the controls between source data and output. In between, what happens and how does the data get from being the source data into the output? So there are some standards that are forthcoming and some that have recently been adopted that talk about assurance of data. So I know I've talked a lot here, but that's really, those are some of the concerns that are out there.
Very interesting way to think about it. And I think part of what you're saying is, as institutions get into this, it requires a lot of thoughtfulness, a lot of intentionality, a lot of envisioning permissions and boundaries around this. What are some other things that community financial institutions should consider to protect information, to protect data before letting staff turn this on? It's a great thing, and let me show you how it works, boss.
Right. That's so true. And to your point, that planning that you brought up, we cannot skip that part. And typically when we're talking with financial institutions, we do recommend putting together a committee of people who may be touching AI before you even start. And I would strongly encourage including people from marketing, HR. We want to include the various disciplines within the financial institution because it's going to have a different effect, a different impact within each area. So we want to put the committee together first just to start talking through and identifying what could AI do for us. Now, it may benefit to, such as this podcast. There may be other AI information. There are other sites like Microsoft has got Copilot sites where you can kind of envision how AI might fit within the organization, but then meet as a group and say, okay, let's put some ground rules together. Let's start by thinking about AI here and here and here, but do this as a group. Once you have done that, we want to look at the policies and procedures. Do we have our administrative controls in place? There should be a policy in place for acceptable use of AI within the bank or the credit union. We need to get that out, and it has to be adopted and followed by all. So now we've had the committee, we've talked through possible uses, we get the policies in place. Then we want to look at the system or systems where we want to start doing this. So AI readiness is significant. We want to look at the boundaries. So for example, we do a great deal of work with Microsoft AI with the Copilot product, less so with OpenAI. So I can speak more confidently about the Microsoft solution because that's frankly where I've put most of my efforts. But so for example, Microsoft, some of the requirements to leverage Microsoft Copilot, your data needs to be in SharePoint and OneDrive. Now, I know a lot of financial institutions get nervous when they talk about saving data in the cloud. Regulators have not had a problem with that at all, so long as they've considered those boundaries, so long as they considered the controls to best secure the data. When the controls are in place, we've worked with federal, state, and third-party organizations coming in to do IT audits, and we've not had any issues. So saving your data in the cloud is frankly, that was something to worry about 10 years ago. We're over that. It's okay to put your information in SharePoint and OneDrive. But then you want to make sure that the data is set up so that the groups have access that should have access. If your data hasn't been migrated, we do need to move it to SharePoint and OneDrive. And then it's a matter of really keeping track of the controls, because Microsoft has done a terrific job with their boundaries. Copilot uses the rights and credentials that have already been set up. So Mike, if you have access to a certain folder, but I don't, if you ask Copilot to do something for you, it will reference that information. If I ask Copilot to do the same thing, I cannot see the same information that you do because you have rights to a folder or a share or a site that I don't have rights to. So we want to consider those things. And another one I missed as far as another potential problem, we need to make sure the information is accurate. I was messing around trying to figure out some things with Copilot here recently, and I asked it to start responding based on our company policies. Well, it found a vacation policy that was 10 years old, and it didn't know that that was inaccurate. So it's about keeping current, real information available.
This question is going to be skewed. The results will likely be skewed because if you're in the room, a bank or credit union is already more attentive and probably already on their toes with cybersecurity, AI. These concerns are more front and center. But do you have a feel for community banks that you work with or that you've interacted with that are using this? What percent is using this versus what percent is not? And what do you see? Do you see the ones that are not, their employees are still tinkering with this without boundaries?
Okay, let's start with the SharePoint and OneDrive, because that is one of the first steps, getting your data out into SharePoint and OneDrive. Out of all of the financial institutions we work with, over a third, but under half, are currently using SharePoint and OneDrive. And this is both the largest and the smallest. So I can't really say it's only the big ones or only the small ones. I've worked with a couple of publicly traded financial institutions, very, very large national organizations. They've been in SharePoint and OneDrive for a long time. I also worked with some very small community banks. They have been in SharePoint and OneDrive for a long time. But if you want an overall, I would say between a third and a half have information in SharePoint and OneDrive. Now, in terms of the use of Copilot, the only ones that I work with that are even touching this right now are the very large ones, and they are doing it in a pilot setting. But there are ways you can definitely do it at a pilot setting, even if you are very small. And I would recommend starting with a certain certain group. Start with your marketing. Let it write your blog posts. It's amazing how well it does and how it learns what you're asking. And then you tell it, well, change this, add bullets. I want this. It remembers your preferences. So the next time you ask it to write a blog post on a different topic, it remembers all of those preferences and they're all there. It's really fascinating how it does learn your preferences and how it can pull information, but you have to be careful to read that information. Quick little story. I asked Copilot to write a blog post for me regarding a firewall vulnerability. It wrote a wonderful, it was perfect. And as I'm reading through it, down toward the bottom, it said, and clients of integrity that are susceptible to this include. And I'm like, oh no, it had access to that. It saw that and it thought, well, let's just add this. Not thinking, hey, this is for public consumption. So read what comes out of it. But we all know that we have to verify anyway. But it's just fascinating how well it works.
So when it did that, when it went into clients of integrity have this risk or whatever that was, how did it pick that up?
Because there is other information. So Copilot doesn't think on its own. All it can do is find what has been done before and bring it up in creative and unique ways. And yes, I've got a document that shows this vulnerability and what firewalls have that or had that vulnerability. And so Copilot found that and referenced that document. So Copilot really is a very creative parrot. It's only looking for what is already out there. And when you talk about the generative capabilities of AI, that's based on the large language model. This was developed by reading the internet. It's basically for many years, it's been reading all the sites and all the information. And that is what formed the large language model, which creates the generative capability of AI.
So in Copilot, you've given access to certain files on your server potentially. I'm not a tech guy, so my language is probably off. But visually, you've said you can search our server or our machines for this info with the permissions granted, and it can pull whatever data to write that for you, correct?
It can, but I do want to be specific. Copilot does not work off the information that is on your servers in your office. The information needs to be moved to SharePoint and OneDrive, which is Microsoft's online storage. Then Copilot can read that, use that in the creation of other documents.
Gotcha.
Yes. And we've used this in policy creation. So a financial institution might say, we need a policy for artificial intelligence. You can ask Copilot to say, based on, and name your current, for example, if a financial institution has a written information security program, they could ask Copilot, create a policy based upon this file for, and then name the bank or the credit union, and it will create a policy that will be a solid framework to start from. And it is a significant time saver.
I can see the efficiencies, definitely. So comparing that to an HR person writing a policy using Copilot versus using ChatGPT. So Copilot would just look internally for its data, and ChatGPT
would both. Okay. Copilot will use the same large language model that ChatGPT uses. When we talk about ChatGPT, that is actually OpenAI, is who created ChatGPT. Microsoft has either invested or has already committed $13 billion with a B to OpenAI and ChatGPT. So Copilot is not ChatGPT, but it leverages ChatGPT for its responses and its information. Copilot is not the DALL-E image generator, but Copilot leverages the DALL-E image generator for image generation and creative image activities.
Is it accurate to say that ChatGPT does not have the access? It's a one-way street. Copilot can go out and leverage ChatGPT, but ChatGPT cannot go into Copilot without the permissions?
I like the way you put that. Yes, without the permissions. And that's why it's important to do that readiness assessment to make sure your permissions are set up correctly, that you do not have anonymous links set up inadvertently. But that is correct. With the Microsoft Copilot, your data stays your data. And those parameters, those boundaries around your data, your information doesn't leave that unless you've explicitly asked it to.
Okay. Very interesting. Let's zoom out a little. What do the regulators think about AI and how financial institutions are or should be using this?
My experience has been more around the SharePoint and the OneDrive. Let's specific to Copilot. Copilot wasn't a thing until February. So Microsoft had intended Copilot to be released in April. And due to one of their vendors messing up and releasing some information, Microsoft went ahead and started offering Copilot licenses at the end of January. So we are at the infancy of this product. Now, I have spoken with some regulators about it, and really the approach that they are taking at this time is pointing back to vendor management program. If you consider using Copilot, if you consider using these, the financial institution needs to understand the risk, understand the controls, and have a business reason to use this. Not unlike any other product that you use. It's just another tool. But yet we have not gone through an IT review with a regulator at a financial institution using it yet. So most of my experience has predominantly been with the SharePoint and the OneDrive and making sure that the boundaries are set correctly. And that's, like I said previously, there have been no exceptions and no concerns with doing that so long as the controls are followed. And I suspect it's going to be the same way with Copilot because of those boundaries.
This conversation could go on for a very long time, and we have to keep it shorter, though, unfortunately. And there's only so much of this discussion that I can digest. I need to hear it. I need to think about it for a couple of days and come back to it. So maybe we can have you back on this podcast at some point in the next couple of months, because this is evolving very quickly. What are a couple of things that you would tell community banks or financial advisors and credit unions? Next steps. How do you make sure that you're taking advantage of the positives of this, but you're being safe? Are there 2 or 3 next steps that they should take? And Scott, I'd remind you that most of the community banks and credit unions that we're working with are small institutions under $1 billion. And the president of the bank, the president of the credit union is also dealing with HR issues. They're dealing with loan review issues. They're dealing with safety and soundness exams. They're the chief cook and bottle washer as well. And they've got, a lot of times the environment is they've got somebody that has a tech interest and some tech savvy, or a marketing person with more tech savvy and creativeness. And it's being pushed up towards them, or they recognize I should do this, but it's beyond my expertise and my plate's already full. What advice can you give them?
First advice would be, don't wait too long. This is not something we can just ignore. At the very beginning of this podcast, I had commented that AI is likely the most disruptive and biggest change to technology in the 4 decades that I've been doing this. If you think about the biggest changes in technology, we went from DOS to Windows. We went to the character with the mouse. That was a huge change. That was drastic. I don't think that's anything compared to what we're going to see with AI and the capabilities of the generative. So my first suggestion is we cannot wait forever. So come up with a plan. A second thing that you can do, the planning is going to be key. We need to have that committee. We need to say, and this does not have to be multiple long meetings. Let's identify a place, for example, marketing, where we could try to leverage Copilot. Then it's a matter of looking at your policies. Do we have a policy in place? Once the policies are in place, is our data in SharePoint, and do we have the right preparedness? Have we gone through preparedness review to make sure that your information doesn't become the answer to somebody else's question? And then I do think that it's an area where you need to dip your toe in the water. Now, in some areas, you can use the free version of Copilot that comes with Edge. So if you go to Microsoft Bing and do a search, you can use the free version. But I would caution everyone, do not put any confidential information in there. Ask it general questions. But again, I don't want your information to become part of that large language model to be the answer to someone else's question. And that gets back to that policy. We do not upload anything to ChatGPT that is confidential. Any PII, personally identifiable information, anything that's a matter of intellectual properties, things that we don't want to let out, we don't want to put up into these solutions unless you're using a Copilot paid license that respects those boundaries of your SharePoint and OneDrive. You asked for a couple, I gave you 4. So
No, it's really good. I think that a lot of these financial institutions, including our firm, we need help, right? We need outside experts. We don't have the expertise in-house. If we're only seeing these things once or twice, it's a long learning curve for us to ramp it up with our staff versus consultants that may see this dozens, hundreds of times. This is what they're trained in. This is their focus again, versus a lot of these financial institutions they're small businesses, and they're, like I said earlier, they're the chief cook and bottle washer sometimes. How many consultants, and how do you find good consultants to come in and guide these small businesses through this major change that, as you're referencing, is the biggest change in your 40 years potentially?
How do you find good consultants? And I'm going to answer this first from the standpoint of integrity. That was part of what made it attractive for me to join Integrity 8.5 years ago. They have a culture and they hire for that culture. And they have done a very good job getting people who want to share, who have the heart of a teacher, that want to support people. And we've had the good fortune of hiring good people and allowing them to grow in technology. And in terms of the consultants that I have on my team and that we have here, that's kind of been our secret sauce, is it really gets back to our HR function and just identifying those people out of the gate. In terms of other companies, finding other consultants, I know it is a challenge. It is a tough market. And I've got dozens, if not probably hundreds, of managed service provider friends, having been in this industry for so long from coast to coast. And I know the challenges people have finding people. But you just have to continue looking for that culture. You have to continue looking for the person who has a heart of a teacher that understands that there is more that I don't know than I do. And then being willing to work with others, being humble to say, Mike, I don't know. And I teach my team that too. It's a sign of maturity when you say, I don't know. Because it's the industry moves that fast.
I agree. Well, this has been great, Scott. And like I said, this could go on. We could dig into this in lots of different directions. Obviously, it's changing things very rapidly. NVIDIA is over $3 trillion in market cap. Microsoft is over $3 trillion in market cap. It's creating a lot of interesting discussions and a lot of transformative changes. So we'd love to have this conversation continue again sometime in the near future, if you'd be willing to come back.
I would look forward to it, Mike. I really would. Great.
In the meantime, for our audience, what's the best way for them to learn about you or contact you?
Probably our website. Our website is integrityts for technologysolutions.com. And then we also can be reached by phone at area code 309-662-7723.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Scott. And to all of our listeners, thank you again for joining us. On behalf of all of us at Midwestern Securities and Banking on Growth, we look forward to the next podcast together. Thank you.
This has been another insightful journey with Banking on Growth with Michael Graham and Midwestern Securities, a member of FINRA and SIPC. We appreciate your time. If you found value in today's discussion, consider subscribing for more thought-provoking discussions in the world of finance. Your support helps us continue to bring you quality insights. If you have a topic you'd like us to consider covering or have thoughts on one of our episodes, we'd love to hear it. Just email us at media@midwesternsecurities.com. Remember, the power to grow is within you. Thank you for being a part of the Midwestern Securities community. Until next time, stay inspired and keep banking on growth.